Okay, hello everybody. My name is Kevin. I just want to share my experience dealing with tenants who have representative and without representative. For those tenants who will not have representative, usually they will have no clue or they have little clue what is the market rental practice. Example, the first thing will be the security deposit. Some tenants will expect to just to pay 1 month's deposit for a 2 years lease, but in market practice it's actually 2 months security deposit. And also there are cases whereby when we have done up the tenancy agreement, the tenant is expected to pay up the advance rental and the security deposit. But many times tenants that I come across that don't have a representative will question why do they need to actually transfer the full amount, the security deposit, and also the advance rental before they start the lease. Example, a month ahead or 2 months ahead. They are puzzled, and I told them this is actually a market practice because the owners also need to have the assurance. Besides signing, they also need the money before they can actually proceed with the TA.
Actually, I think I just want to jump in here to explain a little bit about what Kevin means by market practice. So normally before you sign, even before you proceed to put an offer, you normally do an LOI, called letter of intent, and you have to give a 1 month deposit to show it's a good faith deposit to show that you're serious in renting the unit. We're talking about rentals here. So after that, when you're done, you sign the TA, you get the TA out, tenancy agreement out, and you sign it. That's when you have to pay the remaining deposit plus advance rental. So if it's a 1 year rent period, then that will be 1 month deposit and 1 month advance rental. If it's 2 years, so basically every year of rent you plus extra 1 month deposit lah. So you have to pay the 2 month deposit in the 2 year rent and then also advance rental. So this advance rental, a lot of clients, they don't understand why. For example, you are signing a tenancy agreement 2 months in advance. Why can't I pay just before I start my tenancy? Why do I have to pay the moment I sign the tenancy agreement? And that's actually the market practice. So of course, if you have a landlord who's understanding, then you may say, okay, I understand, maybe you want to pay me maybe 2 weeks before the start of tenancy agreement. But then that's now just a negotiation. But the market practice definitely, when you sign the tenancy agreement, you have to pay everything by then.
So I agree with what Kevin said, because in normal tenancy agreement, the tenant supposedly come with a set of requirements. Let's say, for example, they want the landlord to have a new set of sofa, furnitures or something like that. So there are some investment that is going to be made by the landlord. So these kind of investment, depending on what the level of the requirements, so the money do have to come in. But then, if the tenant comes without a representing agent and we are the landlord agent telling them that you have to do this and this is the standard practice, if they do not understand, then they come in thinking that by default we are already the landlord's agent, so naturally we will cite the landlord and bring up certain terms and conditions that is actually not in favor to them. But this is actually not the case. So the starting point is already sort of wrong already, because they already have the preconceived idea that the landlord's agent is actually biased towards the landlord, when this is actually the standard agreement, right?
Yes.
So good point that is mentioned by Kevin. Celestine, what about yourself? Any specific circumstances or case studies that you come across that you can think of?
I think to add on to your point about the tenant having a representing agent, I think it helps very much in the issues that tenants face after they move into the house, because there is the standard market practice is there is a 30-day defect liability period, whereby if anything is faulty or things don't work well in the house, within 30 days of the tenant moving in, he can report it to the landlord and the landlord has to get it rectified and fixed. So in this process, if he has a representing agent, I think it will help to move things along better, because landlord agents being representing the landlord is if in any situation that is not in favor of the landlord, they can turn a blind eye and they can drag it out to help the tenant. But with a representing agent, at least there is a buffer between you and the landlord's agent. So it helps to bring the communication along better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think pertaining to this that you just mentioned, it also brings across, like, for example, if a tenant has a certain requirement, so usually at a point of offer, they actually have to come up with a letter of intent.
Yes.
So sometimes if the tenant does not have an agent and they come in with a set of requirement, sometimes the agent didn't even see the need of going into a letter of intent. They go straight into the tenancy
Yeah.
agreement. So in this case, the requirement of the tenant is not clearly being spelled out. And upon the upon the handover, well, is actually based on whether the landlord's agent then honor what was being discussed and to actually bring it across to the landlord. So there's a lot of gray areas over here, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And
sorry.
speaking about letter of intent, I think it's very important to clearly state whatever the tenant needs inside, and then ensure that the requirements are honoured in the tenancy agreement and in the handover. So usually we will protect the tenant. If we are representing the tenant, we will protect the tenant by requesting the landlord's agent to include a clause in the tenancy agreement saying that the letter of intent signed on whichever date is part of this tenancy agreement. So every condition that is stated in the letter of intent is tied together with the tenancy agreement. So we would expect that the landlord hand over the house with everything that has been stated lah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I do have a bit of things to add on to what actually Kevin and Celestine has already shared. So for the LOI, I think a lot of times, I think to add on to that, if the tenant comes in without an agent, there can be certain miscommunication. For example, in a recent case that I think Lawrence and I were both involved in, the tenant had several requests, but it all came in piecemeal, meaning that maybe the offer was already put up without having most of the requests put in, and then halfway through the tenancy agreement while we were coming up with it, then slowly bit by bit they add in, I want the bed to be removed, I want an extra mirror, I want a dryer, a proper dryer instead of a washer/dryer combination, because the dryer would be a standalone dryer would be able to dry my clothes better. So this kind of communication, when it is not put up front together with the offer that is made, it actually sends out a very wrong signal to the landlord. Because, for example, if you come in without request, the landlord will be more willing to consider a lower price point than if you're coming with a list of items that you need the landlord to do, because that, as Lawrence has already shared, requires some investment. For example, a new dryer may cost a couple of $100, and the expensive one will cost upwards of $1,000. So I think setting that record straight early on sets the tone right for the whole relationship, especially if it's going to be a 1-2 year tenancy. I think without an agent, a lot of tenants do not understand this. They think it's just okay to add things in without properly documenting them upfront. I think a tenant who has an agent representing them will be able to better protect themselves, because they wouldn't know that they need to do something called the handover report. I mean, they don't necessarily have to do it, but they will be protected with it. So, for example, when during the handover, the walls may not be, repainted again. There may be some markings here and there, or the flooring, some scratches. And a tenant without an agent may just take it as, I have said it verbally or via WhatsApp or even via a phone call with the landlord and the landlord agent, I pointed this out. But if it's not properly documented, there can be a lot of disagreement, come the end of the tenancy, which we have all faced ourselves in the course of our work. And it'll be useful to have a total, condition report, like, in the living room, the kitchen, photos and videos, but what are defects in these areas. And also to expand on the 30-day thing, for example, things that we cannot see during the handover, like the aircon having issues, or a certain part of the house, lighting having issues, that should also end up in the condition report within the 30 days. I remember doing a very extensive one for one of our clients, actually. So it can take a lot of time, and that explains why we do ask for at least a certain amount of commission, and we think that it does properly protect the tenant.
So in such cases where such minor cosmetics defects don't get documented at the very start, Then when we hand over the house back to the landlord, some landlords may be more particular and they might come after the tenant for all these defects that were already originally there. So the tenant will be on the losing end. Yeah. Different landlords have different tolerance levels. So we just have to do our part for the party that we are representing. Yeah.
I think what you said is very, very true, and that's why we have seen in the news article, disputes between landlords and tenants, how the landlords actually withhold the deposit longer than they should, and because they just can't come to an agreement whether certain things should be on the landlords, whether is it landlord should actually foot the bill because it was already there, or tenant should do it because obviously they have added to the damages to the unit. And unfortunately, this kind of disputes can only be avoided if everybody's on the same page right at the start. You make it clear that this is already there. Yes.
Yeah. I think pertaining to this, right, I have an example which I also shared in some of the videos that I've got a client who actually bought a place that was with tenancy. So this is actually very important because then if the tenant does not come with a representing agent and they don't know what to do, which was actually the situation, they didn't document anything. So my client purchased the unit, became a new owner. So obviously we were not being able to know what was the history for the unit. So naturally, upon the handover, when the lease expires, we go through the normal checks, and whatever defects we pointed out, to us they are defects. And because we do not know what was the situation then, nobody had any photos. The tenants also did not have any photos. Then the landlord will have to then register that as a defects, and we have to do the rectification works. Then the tenant were not happy because then they were saying that the defects were already there, but where were the proof, And then they were saying that my agent was doing this, my agent had this record, but the agent turns out not to be their agent.
The previous landlord's agent.
Yeah, the previous landlord's agent. So the previous landlord's agent cannot be doing the work for the tenant.
Yes.
So that's the problem.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have spoken a bit about tenancy issues, tenants without a representing agent. So what about for sale and purchases? Any of you have any experiences? Agents don't want to co-broke?
I think less of an experience at the start. I think I just want to point out that there's always a misconception among buyers that if they go into an appointment without an agent, they are more likely to get a discount because the seller agent doesn't have to share the commissions with the buyer. And which is the market practice right at this point for private properties. So I think I also like to correct that misconception that seller agent will always represent the seller's interest.
Yeah.
And even if they do not have to share the commission fee with a buyer agent, it is in their interest also to increase the sale price as much as possible on a few counts actually. One, that it also improve how much they receive as a commission because it's a percentage. And on second, it's also good for their portfolio, they can put on their social medias and, whether the seller gives a testimonial and say that, what, this agent managed to sell for me at X amount. So a lot of buyers have the misconception that if the seller agents get to, earn a little bit more from the commission, then correspondingly they might be able to, send some of that extra commission earned as savings to the buyers. And I think that's not the right mindset to have because at the end of the day, any transaction is essentially a negotiation between two opposing parties, one which wants as high as possible and the other half wants as low as possible. And if you do not have the required knowledge of the market and how to negotiate, if it's not in your job, then you will be at a losing end because the seller agent will always protect the seller's interest. Yeah, so I think that is one of the first things that I want to point out right from the get-go. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned that about the knowledge. So what does a person having knowledge or not having knowledge in terms of property help in the negotiation?
I think there are quite a number of factors. definitely some of the factors may include broadly, which I think buyers will be able to find a bit more easily, would be doing the data market, the market research, getting all the data for the area. Why would this project actually fare better than the other project, and therefore, is this price that is being asked by the seller, is it fair? It's not, sometimes it's not so simple just because there's a valuation, therefore you can just put a price on it just on valuation alone. Sometimes seller asks for a bit higher because they have better facing, because the condition is better. Maybe above 30th floor, there's a better view. Yeah, and therefore there's a premium that's attached. Historically, there's always a premium attached to this unit. Or worse, maybe this person does not have a unit, but the seller still wants to ask for a premium on it. I think if you do not have the required knowledge about this project and what it offers, this unit offers, then you are at a losing end in the conversation if you just look at past transactions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when buyers find something that they really like, they can get a bit too emotional. So an agent being in the middle of the whole negotiation is like the logical side that we can provide to you. So apart from that, we also can give you data on the past transaction, how much exactly this current owner of this unit has bought the unit at, which would determine how much room for negotiation there is. And I think every property purchase, no matter for own stay or for investment, is important to consider your exit strategy. So it's very much dependent on the entry price that you buy into.
I think it's also about buying the right place. It doesn't have to be just this project. A buyer agent can then do the analysis of why, maybe condo X would fare better than condo Y, even if they are side by side. And definitely, as agents, we have done a lot of market research on this. We even have slides put up, on this very topic alone. Why, this project would fare better than the other, even though it's,
Yeah, because a property purchase shouldn't always be an emotional one.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that contribute to whether a property is a good buy or not.
Yep.
So it's not, some buyers think that freehold is always better than a leasehold property, but we have data that says that this is not in fact true. So I think when buyers look into buying a property, these are the factors that they should really take into consideration, and that's where all our analysis would come into play for the client. Yeah.
For my experience itself, I also want to share that us being the agent, we actually really help the buyers from start till the end, by even telling them to be composed, because buyers get very excited,
Yeah.
and it will actually show the seller's agent.
Even during the viewing, they get so excited when they like the house.
That is really, that is the starting point that will give the seller's agent an upper edge.
Yeah.
And then if he knows the buyer, he or she is excited, he will definitely, without, let's say it's without an agent, the buyer will, unfortunately, will fall into the trap and will actually reveal more information to the seller's agent. So the seller's agent will have an upper hand because they know that this buyer is interested.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when it comes to negotiation, the buyer will have little room or no room to negotiate.
It doesn't work in our
it doesn't
favor.
work in our
Yeah.
Usually, what will you do? Like you're saying that you ask your client to be composed.
Yes.
What will you do usually?
Yes, even before the viewing, I'll prep the buyer. Say,
Yeah.
if you like the house, you don't like the house. Basically, you don't show too much of an emotion.
Poker face.
Poker face, and then just be respectful. Especially you see things that you don't like, you should not even actually make a comment, because if the owners are right there, actually it will also impact the negotiation, because the owner knows that you make a lot of remark. The owner, unfortunately, will not feel. They will not feel inclined to actually sell the house to you. This is based on some of the experiences that I came across. Another thing is also when it comes to the viewing itself, besides not showing emotion, we will just be respectful, not to open up any cabinets or wardrobes, because I've come across whereby buyers, they do it out of curiosity, but not knowing that this will actually also impact the sellers. This is especially during the pandemic time whereby I came across. So us as agent, we don't just help the buyers to get a better price, but we also handheld them from the start to the end, what are the things to do and not to do.
Yeah, I think all these minor things is what builds the impression with the seller. In case we do want to offer and negotiate on a unit, it helps in our case. So things like taking photos and videos of the unit also, I think
Oh, yeah.
we
Yeah,
have to
consent.
be,
You need that
be
consent.
more pay more attention to it,
Yes.
because some buyers, they just whip out their phones and just started taking photos of the unit, but not every homestayer, the seller is very comfortable with that. Even for tenants also, some are very particular. So
Yeah, so
must
actually-
be more aware.
Exactly. So actually, what you guys have pointed out forms very much the negotiation process right from the very start. Little things like being mindful of our actions, especially the buyer's actions, whether you upset the seller and therefore impact the negotiation before it even starts. And also of course not showing too much emotion, don't show hand that you're very interested in the unit, even if it's like the most perfect unit you have ever seen. You already decided that this is the unit to go for. You don't show it, so that in negotiation the seller will not have enough information. So it's all about keeping information close to yourself and only revealing them based on the situation. I think unless you're in the market, unless you have that negotiation knowledge, how to actually approach this thing, basically you will be at a disadvantage immediately from the get-go.
I think in today's market, a lot of agents actually go beyond what we have actually mentioned also. Asking them to be composed, telling them what are the sets of behaviors, the right behaviors, the right presentation of themselves, right? But on top of that, the agents also add value in choosing what kind of developments are good for them, looking out for what are the possible pitfalls. And like just now, you guys mentioned, like for example, just when Christopher mentioned about the knowledge, what I can thought of was a direct buyer coming to make a negotiation and trying to use certain transactions that were so-called not relevant. Like for example, using a big development transaction on a small development or vice versa.
Yes.
Because small development, big development, the per square feet is also very different. Right? So they use irrelevant
Data points.
data points, irrelevant information in their negotiation. And the whole sense of feeling, if the landlord agent or the seller's agent were to bring this across to the sellers, the owners, then the information seems very off, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't really put the buyer in the right position to negotiate also. Yeah.
Yes.
So anybody has got any experience that you are blocked from viewing? Because actually last year, some agencies came together to sign a memorandum
Yes.
to encourage buyers or tenants to have their own representing agent, to pay their own representing agent.
Yes.
And of course, in the market now, it is not a practice yet, but all these major agencies hope that it could be a practice.
Yeah.
So, and then in these two articles that were in Straits Times and Business Times, it talks about some of the agents being blocked from viewing. Have you guys had any of such experience?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So, maybe Celestine, you can share about your situation. Yeah.
Oh, there was one time my buyer was very keen on this unit, so they sent me the link asking me to make arrangements with the seller's agent. But when I texted him, I didn't receive a reply from him. I tried to call him, I didn't get a answer. So my buyer was really keen on the house. So when I gave the updates to her, she thought, she didn't think too much, and she went to text the agent, to which he replied to her about a viewing.
So there was a difference.
Yeah. So he didn't reply to me, but he could reply to her. Yeah. So in that case, the buyer went ahead to view with him. Even though she told him that she has an agent, but he said he doesn't deal with agents lah. So he will deal directly with her because she contacted him. Yeah. So in that case, when I tried to come in to give a offer, even a formal offer, we gave a offer to purchase to him.
Of course, one way would to be for the sellers would be to actually find an agent that has the principles to not do this kind of thing. That's one, finding the right agent. The second thing would be, of course, for the buyers to actually pay their own agents and therefore have this conflict go away. Yeah. So basically, in short, every agent is being paid by their own representing client, and therefore there shouldn't be any crisscross of interest, which actually complicates the deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I've got a similar case like Celestine. Without much, much delay, they actually got to view the unit and they purchased the unit through the agent. Yeah. So I mean, it happens quite often actually. Even though it's during the COVID, as in sorry, I want to say during the pandemic at the time, and even post pandemic also, we are still facing these issues. Because the agent themselves they're just interested in just having the full comp, and then of course they know that having the agent not just will take away the commission, and at the same time also it's harder to deal with the agent because the agent will have interest for the buyers themselves about having an agent representing them because
So you're saying agent have interest for the buyer?
actually interest for the sellers. So actually the seller's agent, buyers should actually reconsider market valuation because they didn't know that they have to do a bank indicative. And the other thing is also they are not aware in terms of the profitability of the project itself. Are there a lot of
Profitability.
Profitable.
Probability of profitability.
Profitability
Yeah, okay.
and are there a lot of transactions in this particular development, and what was the recent transaction? So buyers will have all these infos,
But not be able to know how to decipher and interpret the
decipher,
data.
yes, from the data itself. So and they will not know how to compare surrounding projects. So for my
Relative.
for this relative, so the relative was thankful that she approached me because she realized that there's so much more behind the scene in terms of when coming to negotiation.
And also getting the sense of the heartbeat of the agent or even having the heartbeat of the seller. And sometimes it's not just also the heartbeat of the agent and the seller, but also somebody acting behind the scene. Like for example, it could actually be a seller. This property is under this particular seller's name, but the money actually came from the father.
Oh, so the decision maker is actually the father.
Decision maker is the father. But then now you have the seller's agent, you have the sellers, and the seller's father, or even the seller's father's wife that is affecting the father, affecting the, it's multifaceted.
Yeah, basically the mother, right?
Yeah. So
Seller's
so
father's
there are a lot of different angles, and this is just only one part of it. So
Yes.
the person who is doing this negotiation, they need to from the onset know what kind of information to look out for, what are the right questions to ask, and yet I have to ask in a way that is not superly imposing. Like if I want to know, for example, how long you have been marketing the place, for example, so that I have a sense of whether the owner is urgent, whether the owner is already conditioned to sell or whatnot. How do I then put it across to ask in a way that I will get the answer that I want? So there are a lot of these kind of things that is going around in the negotiation aspect of things. Yeah.
So I actually had a client who actually approached me before the person bought. Actually, the person did not actually engage my service. So the person was actually going into a negotiation, and then a person asked me whether is this a good buy, am I buying at the right time, am I buying at the right price, and is this a good project? So I told the client, just give me a bit of time to run through the details, and then I asked the client whether is the price within the bank indicative. So the client was a bit shocked. What do you mean by bank? What is bank indicative? I said normally for agents we will before we even offer, after we view the unit, we will send the details of the development itself to bankers to check the bank indicative. this is important is because, let's say for a buyer that does not is not aware of the bank indicative price, they may overpay and end up paying COV. We call that COV, cash over valuation. So there are actually many cases. So I did a bank indicative for this client, the unit that they are interested, and realized that actually is over the valuation. And also I realized the past transaction is quite far off from the asking price as well, and they were really shocked. And the other thing I also pointed out was the surrounding projects are actually more affordable, and in terms of the layouts, they are actually equally good. So the client was actually quite shocked. And then I actually make a appointment with them. I went through the transactions and also the layouts, and they didn't realize that they actually miss out so much information. So I told them, actually without an agent, you have a lot of blind spots. And because you don't do this, they are like us, definitely you will be blinded by all these blind spots. And because the seller's agent is also, the interest is only for the seller, therefore they will push for the highest price, and they will not even bother about the buyers, whether they are paying COV or not. Their interest is also just for the sellers themselves, and they want to get the units out of the market as soon as possible. So after the session with the client decided to actually engage me for their services, and they also paid me commission as well. They agreed to pay me commission.
So I would say in this case, the client is very lucky, because if they had not met you, they might have proceeded to give 1%, right?
Luckily they were
be
not
surprised.
so excited until they go and put the option money.
Yeah,
then they
1%
realize,
is a lot.
wow, COV.
Yeah.
Recently I did a case. The buyer did not have any issue in engaging me and paying me. It was actually a HDB case, and because this client he quite tight financially, so she's always looking for properties that is comfortable within her range. So in the end, I got her to buy something that is like 70,000 higher than her intended purchase price, but it was a property that is right beside the future MRT station. And I explained to her about the like all the recent policies about the plus, the prime, and the standard flats, and the implications on the future flat prices. Of course, this just happened. Only time will tell if my recommendation to her to pay that 70,000 higher than her initial intended house is the correct choice. But I think these are the things that, like for example, when I explained to her plus standard all this, she totally had no idea of what was going on and what were the implications. Because in Singapore context, we have to understand that there were just so many policies in place that is actually built on like a kueh lapis, like it's so many layers. And all these policies have implications on the property prices.
Yeah, also additionally, I think what is important when buying a property is ensuring that your timeline matches, especially so when you are selling one property then buying another one. You want to ensure that the sale and purchase timeline coincide well with each other, such that you have a roof over your head during the transition. You don't have to be homeless or be renting somewhere else. And also the funds flow from your current property to the new purchased property. Because CPF and cash proceeds come in differently at different timing for your sale, so you have to plan it such that it would coincide with the payments for the new property. Yeah, some people overlook that and then they find themselves short on cash and CPF to pay for the remaining down payment, the 20%, which is quite a hefty amount. Yeah, and also if you don't plan the timeline properly physically, you might have to shift twice because you have to go and find interim housing. So there's one shift, then you unpack, then you got to pack again to move into your new house. So from the onset, if you have an agent who plans your timeline well, clearly right from the start, you know what to expect. and also your at what stage, what kind of payment you have to be expecting is important. It's important to be very clear right from the start before you even start marketing your house and looking for a new place. Because without a solid plan in place, we shouldn't even be embarking on anything. Yeah.
I think just a quick addition to a point that I thought about is that even on this timeline thing, things can change. In that, for example, HDB just come out with a new policy in that they don't allow HDB buyers to actually, sign a renovation form in advance.
Oh, yes.
Previously, we were able to, go through the process of getting the permit done, even though the unit is still in the seller's hand, it's not being completed yet. And we just need the sellers to provide an undertaking letter to say that, they allow, they understand the risks, etc. Right now, and that actually shaves the timing off by at least 2-3 weeks. Right now, HDB is saying that no longer are we accepting any undertaking letter. In fact, any application can only be done after it's been completed. Basically, after completion, you need to spend another 2-3 weeks to get the permit out from HDB, submitting the relevant information and getting HDB's approval before you can even start any work. And that basically complicates the timeline. If you are not aware of this change, then you're going to run into a lot of trouble. Just because of these 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope all of you enjoy the conversation and have plenty to take away from this conversation. We'll see you the next time. Bye bye. If you like what you have just seen and want more of it, subscribe, smash that like button, turn on the notification and share this video so that we can do more. Thank you and see you again.